It's time for another Thursday Thought. Good afternoon. Well, I'd like to venture today into the world of politics for just a moment. Now, don't tune me out. Don't turn me off. It's not going to be what you think. I'm not going to rail against one person and extol the virtues of another. I'm not going to talk about conservative versus liberal, Democrat versus Republican, or any of that stuff. Rather, I'd like to give you my take on how I cope with what goes on in the fantasy world, otherwise known as political theater. Now, there are several political theaters in our culture. There's the national and international theaters. Then we come closer to home with state politics, and finally local politics of various stripes, city, county, school districts, and so on. Each of these theaters vies for our attention as citizens, voters, and supporters. And each of these theaters has as its own modus operandi, so to speak, regarding how, when, what, and why it communicates with us. We, in turn, have a relationship with each of these political theaters. For example, for the vast majority of us, our relationship with national and international politics can be described as distant at best. Yes, we may have intense opinions about this or that regarding the national and international political scene. Our worldview may be such that we coalesce around one or another dogma, issue, or political figure. We may even participate in protests, marches, and other civic activities in order to express our opinion. But the fact is that for the most of us, what we say or do in no way changes what happens in the national or international political scenes. Our individual voices are seldom, if ever, heard. Instead, the communication is the other way around. The political interests are talking to us. Their primary job, it seems, is keeping us stirred up about this or that perceived failure of the other side, asking for money to fight the good fight to keep the bad guys out of power, promising rainbows and unicorns if the good guys are in power, and letting us know that our nation as we know it will cease to exist and the apocalypse will commence if the other side wins. However, with local politics and to a somewhat lesser degree state politics, if we approach it in the right way, we will be heard. The local politicians will listen. We can have a productive dialogue with them, and we can affect change. Additionally, we can engage ourselves in our community. We can make our corner of the world a better place for having been there. We can partner with others to effectively make changes that we alone couldn't do. As my friend Jennifer White says, I can't do everything, but I can do something. We may not be able to move the mountain that is national and international politics, but we can certainly put our shoulders against the hill that is local and state politics and begin to facilitate a move toward a better local society. How, you say? I don't know how you will gain a local politician's ear, but for me, reaching out to that person, displaying kindness, some knowledge of current events, expressing gratitude for their willingness to serve regardless of their political bent, and a desire for genuine conversations, those things go a long way toward gaining an audience. I've also found out that an offer of a lunch date in a place that is relatively quiet so we can just visit over food and drink will often be the carrot for that conversation. I have the ear of my state representative, also the person who will be my state senator next year, my city council person, the city council person of the district where the church is located, my county commissioner, and others in city, county, and state government. Now, I obviously don't always agree with them, nor do they agree with me. I explain my position and they explain theirs. We sometimes agree to disagree and we remain friends. However, I know that I have communicated with them and I know they take what I say seriously and at least consider it as they deliberate and debate in City Hall or the state capitol. I've found that local and state politics is nowhere near the simple 15-second soundbite or the shouted slogan that the media and others would have one to sometimes believe. It's a messy, incredibly complicated thing, and it reaches into the most inner workings of society and in individual lives. It's where we pretty much live as individuals and local community. Well, I've sort of sworn off of national and international politics. I can't change what happens there. I can't communicate in any realistic way with my national representatives. I'm virtually an unknown except as a source of money or ideological energy. But with state and local politics, I can be someone, a person, a human being. I can, if I approach them in a dignified way with kindness and a willingness to listen and learn, have genuine conversation with my local representatives. I can affect change. And you can too. Try it. Get to know those who represent you locally. It's well worth the effort. And don't allow the media and political machines to rile you up with garbage speech, innuendo, and outright lies that should never see the light of day. You'll be healthier. You'll be happier. You'll be free from the scrum at the bottom of the cesspool. Oh, and one last thing. Pray. Pray, as Paul says in his letter to Timothy, for kings and all those in authority, that we may live peaceful and quiet lives in all godliness and holiness. This is good, he says, and pleases God our Savior, who wants all people to be saved and to come to a knowledge of the truth. Blessings.